$1,052 from the subcontractor Impact 7G. This will be paid for from the plant operating funds. Is there a motion to approve the request as submitted?
So moved, Your Honor.
Second.
Second, Your Honor.
We have a motion by Councilman Brackett with a second by Councilwoman Brockert. Is there any discussion? All in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? The request is approved with all ayes. We're on 11Q. We have presented for City Council's consideration a request to approve and sign a contract with Access to Care to provide transportation to passengers with a waiver through the new managed care organization, Iowa Total Care. Is there a motion to approve the request as submitted?
So moved.
Second, Your Honor.
We have a motion by Councilman Harvey with a second by Councilman Brackett. Is there any discussion? I have a question. So this is really good news that finally Iowa Total Care got it figured out so that they could do the contract. But will this also cover having the monthly bus pass, or will this just cover the individual rides to go to doctor appointments and things like that?
Mayor, Council, thank you for your question. I have no idea, but I will find out, and I will let you know tomorrow.
Okay,
All right.
thank you. Hearing nothing else, all in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? The request is approved with all ayes. We're on 11R. We have presented for City Council's consideration a request to enter into an agreement with Windsor Consulting for IT staff augmentation services. 9 proposals were received and reviewed by the review committee, which included the IT manager, John Krusenstein, who's making an entrance for us now, even as we speak, city administrator, finance director, and council members Brackett and Spread. 2 firms were requested to provide further information, and they gave presentations to the committee. The committee is recommending entering into the agreement with Windsor Consulting to provide these services in the upcoming year. The agreement provides for services on an hourly basis, and there is $25,000 approved in the budget for this expense. Do I have a motion to approve the request as submitted?
So moved.
Second.
Second.
We have a motion by Councilman Fitzgerald with the second by Councilman Malcolm. Is there any discussion?
I have one quick question.
Go ahead.
Is the money we're talking about, is that for reactive services or proactive services or both?
Yes. Yeah, I mean, the idea with this is to attempt to be proactive. This is a staff augmentation, and there will be a number of different tasks that are involved with that. Mostly it is to have additional level available for us for additional projects that do come up. So many of those will be proactive. We're going to have an initial assessment done. A lot of the work that's completed will be part of that initial assessment. So this is a open project, and it will be more, I would say, I guess to use your terminology, I guess we'll call it mostly a proactive.
Okay, so does the company just provide, I'll use the word, the manpower, or do they also provide software and hardware?
I would not anticipate purchasing products from this company. They're a consulting organization.
Thank you.
John, I have a
Oh,
question.
go ahead.
So is this a 2-year or a 3-year contract that we're going in with them?
It is a year-to-year contract.
Okay. So hypothetically, if it turns out that we use their services extremely highly in the first couple of months, we could go over 25,000?
There's definitely a possibility that could happen, yes. We put a dollar figure of 25,000 in the budget. We're new to this arena. This is not something we've done in the past. That was I'll just call it an educated guess, what I thought this might possibly be. We kind of estimated about how many hours we think it'll be. Hopefully we don't exceed that $25,000 figure by a large margin.
However, if I could add to that initial assessment that they'll be doing will give us a better idea of what we need to do and when we need to do it, and then if there are things that need to happen sooner rather than later, we will certainly bring that back to council for consideration.
And you said this is something that we did approve? in
There
the
are
budget?
things that need to happen
There
sooner
is
rather
funding
than later.
approved in the budget.
We will certainly bring that back to council for
I
consideration.
didn't understand when they say augmentation. You said this is something that
have
we
two
did
full-time-
approve?
There are things that need to happen
There
sooner
is
rather
funding
than later.
approved in the budget.
We will certainly bring that back to council for
I
consideration.
didn't understand when they say augmentation. You said this is something that we did
full-time-
approve?
There are things that need to happen sooner rather than later. We will certainly bring that back to council for consideration.
I didn't understand when they say augmentation. You said this is something that we did approve?
There are things that need to happen sooner rather than later. We will certainly bring that back to council for consideration.
I didn't understand when they say augmentation. You said this is something that we did approve?
There are things that need to happen sooner rather than later. We will certainly bring that back to council for consideration.
I didn't understand when they say augmentation. You said this is something that we did approve?
There are things that need to happen sooner rather than later. We will certainly bring that back to council for consideration.
I didn't understand when they say augmentation. You said this is something that we did approve?
There are things that need to happen sooner rather than later. We will certainly bring that back to council for consideration.
I didn't understand when they say augmentation. You said this is something that we did approve?
There are things that need to happen sooner rather than later. We will certainly bring that back to council for consideration.
I didn't understand when they say augmentation. You said this is something that we did approve?
There are things that need to happen sooner rather than later. We will certainly bring that back to council for consideration.
I didn't understand when they say augmentation. You said this is something that we did approve?
There are things that need to happen sooner rather than later. We will certainly bring that back to council for consideration.
I didn't understand when they say augmentation. You said this is something that we did approve?
There are things that need to happen sooner rather than later. We will certainly bring that back to council for consideration.
I didn't understand when they say augmentation. You said this is something that we did approve?
There are things that need to happen sooner rather than later. We will certainly bring that back to council for consideration.
You said this is something that we did approve?
There are things that need to happen sooner rather than later. We will certainly bring that back to council for consideration.
You said this is something that we did approve?
Thank you, John. Thanks to the whole team for putting this together. Hearing nothing else, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you, John. Thanks to the request is approved with all ayes. We're on 11S. We have presented for City Council's consideration a request to approve the issuance of a purchase order to Helitech. Running for Helitech, isn't it? Helitech in the amount of $53,663 for the repair of multiple building foundations at Sunset Park. Helitech, isn't it? 3 quotes were received, and the lowest responsible bid meeting all requirements was from Helitech. There was $10,000 in the 18-19 budget for these repairs, which we carried forward to fiscal year 19 requirements. There are funds available in the Public Housing Program Fund to pay the full amount of these repairs. Do I have a motion to approve the request as wanted?
So moved, Your Honor.
There are funds available in the Public Housing. We have a motion by Councilman Brackett, with a second by Councilman Malcolm. Is there any discussion? Go ahead. There are funds available in the Public Housing. We have a motion by Councilman Brackett, with a second by Councilman Malcolm. Is there any discussion?
Mayor just read, says multiple buildings, there's one or more.
I thought there were 2. Maybe there's any discussion.
Mayor just read, says multiple.
Mayor, Council, Jody Royal Goodwin, Community Development Director. It actually is one building. One building. There are other buildings with issues, but right now this is the significant issue that the unit is unable to be occupied.
So this is only going to fix the one?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Do we know what has caused the foundations to become so that the building is uninhabitable?
The primary cause indicated by the engineering report is soil movement soil settling due to water movement through the soil. So like the tree roots have, created holes and stuff, and then it's sandy down there, so the water has moved through and it has settled out more in some areas than others.
So the water table has had something to do with this as well as other factors?
I don't know about the water tables so much. Like this year, it didn't happen this year. It's been progressing
okay.
over time. So our gutter system is another thing we're looking at, and it's one of the things in this scope of work for that building is to have the water moved away from the edge of the building. So it's coming down, and it's just coming out right there, and then it's settled, moving through the dirt to do whatever water does in the dirt. But then, so we'll have at least 6-foot leads to move the water away from the building to avoid that issue.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Hearing nothing else, all in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? The request is approved with all ayes. We're on 11T. We have presented for City Council's consideration a request to authorize the 1920 City Deer Hunt to be held from September 14th of 2019 to January 10 of 2020. Is there a motion to approve the request as submitted?
So moved, Your Honor.
Second.
Second, Your Honor.
We have a motion by Councilman Brackett with a second by Councilman Fitzgerald. Is there any discussion?
I would just make a comment that we keep an eye on the turkey population, and if that gets too excessive, we add them to that in the future.
Hearing nothing else, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The request is approved with all ayes. We're on 11U. Presented for City Council's consideration as a request to approve the issuance of a purchase order to FSS Incorporated in an amount not to exceed $46,111.47 for the upgrade and expansion of camera systems at the Water Resource and Recovery Facility and transfer stations. This project was not bid out due to the fact that FSS Incorporated is the only company capable of taking the current system and tying it in with the new equipment. Is there a motion to approve the request as submitted?
So moved, Your Honor. Second.
We have a motion by Councilman Fitzgerald with a second by Councilman Brackett. Is there any discussion?
Quick question.
Go ahead.
According to the supporting documents, I take it that some of these cameras, if not all of them, have night vision. IR, infrared night
Mayor,
vision.
council, no, I don't recall that, but
I saw IR several times.
possible.
Okay.
Most of these cameras do all kinds of things that the old cameras haven't been able to do, so.
Well, if you don't have light poles or visible spotlights or something, they're not gonna see anything unless they do have the IR.
Yeah, and anywhere that they are pointing outside, there's gonna be lights, and there'll be lights wherever the cameras are needed, so I did not request specifically night vision cameras, but
Okay, you might just ask them.
I haven't dug into, the spec was about that big, I haven't read everything about all the cameras, but they might.
It'd be kinda neat if they did.
Would be
Actually-
cool. Huh.
Actually, some of the things, they are cameras that have those capabilities. You just have to look at the software. We have cameras that I know of that can actually detect a fire from a certain place, send a signal back, alarm, let an operator know that you have something. I mean, if you're looking at those types of cameras, there's capabilities in that software that they can do that can send a signal back.
Sure.
And let you know. And it would be a good discussion point to maybe see if that's something that those are capable of. Ideally, especially looking at some of the future that you're looking at, and as far as that facility becoming a potential productivity of gas and whatnot, so.
Good point.
In reading the material, and I hadn't thought about it before, but a lot of these companies that are sending us food items that are still packaged, they wanna know that they're destroyed.
Correct.
Correct?
That's what the cameras are
That we're
for.
not reselling them to somebody, you know.
Or somebody's come and taken it home.
Right.
And they will actually have the capability of dialing into these cameras themselves remotely. So they can see the cameras anytime, 24/7 if they want to verify for themselves that this stuff is being actually destroyed. It's good.
Thank you.
Yep.
Hearing nothing else, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The request is approved with all ayes. We're on 11V. Presented for City Council's consideration as a request to approve the issuance of a purchase order to Elliott Equipment in an amount not to exceed $16,900 for the purchase of solid waste dumpsters and trash carts. There's $16,900 budgeted in the Solid Waste Refuse Collection Fund for the purchase of residential trash containers and commercial dumpsters. Is there a motion to approve the request as submitted?
So moved.
Second.
Second, Your Honor.
We have a motion by Councilman Brackett with a second by Councilwoman Brockert. Is there any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The request is approved with all ayes. We're on 11W. Presented for City Council's consideration is a request to approve the issuance of a purchase order to Terry and Sons in the amount of $7,300 for the fire department patio ceiling. There's $9,219 in the deferred maintenance project budget for this expense. Is there a motion to approve the request as submitted?
So moved.
Second.
Second, Your Honor.
We have a motion by Councilman Brackett with a second by Councilman Malcolm. Is there any discussion?
So what are they painting? Are they painting wood or concrete, cement?
Thought it was concrete.
Yeah.
Concrete.
Excuse me?
Concrete.
The concrete. So who's doing the actual inspection after as far as mills to make sure that we're getting so many coats on there? Okay.
Okay. So you don't have to answer Jerry doesn't have to do it.
I
answer
guess
the
all I'm getting at
questions.
is I just want to verify
Yeah.
that when we get this coded, that we have at least a verification that they do apply so many coats, either if it's our in-house inspections or a third party of some sort, that we do end up getting, if it's 15 mills, I want to make sure that we do get at least a spot check on maybe a half a dozen areas on that location that we're actually getting what we're requesting. That's all I have.
Thank you. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The request is approved with all ayes. We're on 11X, presented for City Council's consideration as a request to approve the attached list of city-owned surplus items and authorize the sale of said items via online auction between September 2nd and September 16th. Proceeds will go to the individual departments that submitted the items to be sold. Is there a motion to approve this request as submitted?
So moved, Your Honor.
Second?
Second.
We have a motion by Councilman Brackett with a second by Councilman Saucedo. Is there any discussion?
Yes, Your Honor.
Go ahead.
What happens after September 16? Do we just dump the equipment, or?
Mayor, Council, Brian Steinman, Public Works Director. It depends on what the items are. Sometimes we'll just keep them and try them at a future auction. If it's something that we don't really have a much value for or use for, we may just throw it in the trash or recycle it, whatever the case may be.
You wouldn't put it in the landfill, certainly.
It depends on what it is. But yeah, if nobody wants it and we don't need it, it doesn't serve us any purpose to keep it. We may, like I said, we may keep it for one more time and see if anybody wants to bid on it. Otherwise, we get rid of it.
One question, Brian. What is the actual website's name for the public to be able to access this?
It is Public Surplus Auctions. I think it's publicsurplusauctions.com if I'm correct.
Okay.
And then if you go into that and click on, or type in City of Muscatine, it will take you to our auction site.
That's all I have. Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you, Brian. Hearing nothing else, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The request is approved with all ayes. We're on 11Y, presented for City Council's consideration as a request to enter into a contract with CETA Consulting for the evaluation process of the city administrator. CETA Consulting's proposal provides a thorough approach to ensuring the city administrator receives a meaningful, fair, and actionable evaluation. Is there a motion to approve this request as submitted?
So moved, Your Honor.
Second.
Second.
We have a motion by Councilman Brackett with a second by Councilman Saucedo. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
The request is approved with 6 ayes, 5 ayes, and 1 nay. We're on 11Z. We have a discussion regarding Title I, Chapter 10, Section 1B.
So, I have a question on this before we start. I thought we had consensus last time to have this brought forward as a code change. There was a code change that was emailed to us, but that didn't seem to make it into the attachment tonight. Instead, we had a criticizing letter added into the attachment. But I would move that, well, I guess I'm not making a motion. I have a question though, why we didn't get what we had a consensus on last time.
The ordinance that was provided was in the confidential email. I brought copies of it tonight that could be passed around if it was appropriate to do so.
To your point, Councilmember Brackett, changing the code for the city would also require you to change the council rules, which would require a supermajority. And so what we had given to you all was a change that wouldn't require a change in the code of ethics. So
Right.
That was what we had proposed, and that's what I've got here, that
Right,
I
and-
thought was in the packet, but it didn't get in.
Correct. And I find that change acceptable.
Okay.
And would move that we do push that forward.
Okay.
I have no issue with that. I
Okay.
find it adequate to what we requested, and I was disappointed it wasn't actually on the agenda to have a first reading tonight, so.
Can I clarify that? The item here does not require a change to the ethics code?
The language that I proposed, you would not have to change the ethics code, because this would still be in compliance with its subsection 2. Because everything would, the meetings and the issues and concerns would ultimately have the city administrator notified.
Just in reverse?
Yeah.
Right, okay.
Yeah, because the concerns that some people have expressed about abuse of communication, I think this provides for that protection to make sure that, people don't take advantage of that option. And I agree, that is a potential issue. So I do support this verbiage. I don't think there is any perfect verbiage that would come forward from this that would both provide what I really wanted and also the future protections or protections in general against abuse of that ability. So I support the language that was presented to us, and once again, think that it should have been on the agenda for a first reading tonight. But I would like to ask that it be put into the next agenda for a first reading, if that is the proper procedure, and so that we can move forward on that.
We could certainly do that, and it's also, I think there was a misunderstanding that, I still understood that the council would have to act on the ethics rules before that the council could act on the city code.
If they wanted to do a change beyond this, but this change, and that was, again, we wanted to make sure if this was enough, then we didn't have to have the vote and then at the
Right.
next meeting amend and do all that. So this would be something that you could then start the process at the next meeting and not have to wait the 2 full meetings.
Right, and as the person that initiated this originally in January, this meets the requirements that I had.
Okay.
And this only requires a simple
This will just be a
majority.
change to the ordinance, so
Yeah.
correct. The only time it'd require more is if you're going to waive the second and the third readings. But if you're going to do the 3 readings, it would just be the standard ordinance vote. Yes, you're right, Mayor.
And while I support this, absolutely, I also support 3 readings, so I wouldn't want to waive the 3 readings.
Okay.
Are you trying to say that anytime we waive the readings,
We need to
the
have a
3
supermajority.
readings, that we have to have a supermajority?
Not supermajority.
2/3.
2/3?
Two-thirds.
Well, like, for example, you're missing someone tonight, and
right.
so it would alter the vote.
I
yeah.
don't think we've had
You have to have a-
2/3 before.
Two-thirds not, so for the council rules, it requires 6/7 or 3/4.
No, I mean, we have waived the having 3 and reduced it down to only 2 readings without having it be 2/3.
And everyone votes in favor.
No, they don't.
No, it's, the last time that we had that happen, if I can, okay, so
yes.
we had one where at the meeting, and I don't recall which item it was that we were talking about, but there was one where I made a statement, I voted no. Councilman Harvey also voted no to skip, in regards to skipping that. At that meeting, I think it was said that it passed with a majority vote, but then it came back at the, well, I
Later.
wasn't talking into the mic. It came back at the next meeting. Staff brought it back to us and said, no, it didn't actually pass. You need to proceed forward with it. And then since then, we haven't really been
Haven't
pushing
done it,
for
right.
the skipping of those readings.
So we did approve it that night, but it was corrected later.
Yes.
Correct.
Correct.
Gotcha.
So in my comments in regards to this, I reviewed this. Obviously, what we're doing and to the public to be able to see this is we're, in my view, amending or changing the ordinance from the existing code and then adding to what our existing code, which is for the public to be able to understand, is elected officials shall have access to department heads or staff employees for the purpose of open and two-way communications. However, any meetings, issues, or concerns raised through department heads or staff to elected officials shall be brought to the attention of the city administrator. In my view, I'm perfectly good with this. Again, it still continues to keep in line with the fact that we are not here to try to give direction to any city staff. We're not looking to try to come up on a witch hunt, which I'm kind of disappointed in the email as well. In regards to this is in regards for us to be able to get communications, to get feedback, to look at things of how operations may be going, how equipment may be doing, how, just normal day-to-day things that would be able to have, how are you doing, how are things operational? We made comments of how are certain items that we purchased in the past. That is my intent to this, and that is my review of this, and I think I would also second the motion if that's what Councilman Brackett is requesting to add to this ordinance, because we're just basically adding on. We're not changing the existing code. If you read from that, we're just adding on to what was already there, and that is what the city attorney has updated with us. And if we can move forward on that, I would second that motion.
Yes, and that was my intent, was to make a motion that this come forward at the next meeting as an addition to the code, as was provided to us and then would be provided to the public in that, in that agenda, so that we can have a first reading and move forward from there.
So, yeah, the public would then have notice of this, and then you guys would start the process, correct?
Okay, thank you.
So we would still have a public hearing, correct? Is that what you're saying?
There'd
No, there's no
be
public
three
hearing.
readings.
Three
Oh,
readings
that's
of it,
required.
sorry.
Yeah.
Three readings.
Okay.
Your Honor? if I
Yes.
could, I guess I have to speak in deference to the letter that's included in the package. I think city council, city staff has every right to respond to the comments and to the ordinance, or proposed ordinance changes as anyone does. And if they wanted to include those comments in there, I think they're perfectly valid. They can be shown to have been spoken at council meetings. In fact, in most cases verbatim. I think their comments are all valid, and council should weigh them as they would any other member of the public's opinion. In fact, I think it should give it even greater deference in relationship to this issue, as they are the ones that are going to have to be dealing with the consequences of this ordinance changes, as am I. I think you should take their letter into strong consideration, and I appreciate them willing to step forward and put those comments out there. So I don't appreciate the negative feedback that they've been given tonight.
I would like to clarify, I'm not giving the signatures on their negative feedback because I don't think they wrote it. So that's my statement on that. I don't appreciate that being brought forward to us with us not having the ability to have a discussion via email, because we got some of these things via email as well. Now, we can't talk, so we weren't able to talk about this because we have to have it in a public forum, which I support. But we had the code change that I said was brought, was sent to us via email. We didn't discuss it. I wasn't, I didn't respond to anything there. So I also feel that, maybe staff, I don't know if the staff that signed that letter, if they know that code change was being proposed, but I think that, in my mind anyway, that code change should alleviate a lot of the concerns that they had that were expressed in that letter. And that's where I'm disappointed that maybe they weren't provided that information. So I'm not criticizing the staff that signed that letter. I'm really not.
That's
And I
okay,
want
no
them to
problem.
understand that.
And-
But I am disappointed that the communications maybe didn't make it around the way that they needed to for them to understand what was being presented to us. And there was no way that I can say in that conversation via email, I can't say, oh yeah, great, this is perfect, bring it forward. Because then I'm sharing with the rest of the council my opinion on something that should be discussed in a public forum. So that's where I stand on that. And so to clarify my concerns with that letter.
I appreciate your
So,
clarification.
okay, thank you.
And just to add on to that, as well as my feedback in regards to, my proposal was to have unfettered access, basically be able to speak to the actual staff. In my proposal, it was just me putting it together. Obviously, we had an attorney that could come back and give us an ordinance that is approved, able to not actually make the change. That would end up basically changing the code of ethics. So with what I have is, I understand if that was the letter that was written, that was basically under the understanding of what I had requested as far as my proposal. If you guys have not seen that in the new request, that's why I spoke it out loud to be read into the minutes, so you can understand what the code change is going to be. Nothing everything will still be as requested and going through the city administrator for any changes. But to me, to be able to have a conversation with anybody in the city staff, to me, I want to be able to do that without having to always know that I have to be reporting of any nature of saying just how the day may be going or how things may be operational. I want to be able to know those things. That's all I have.
Go ahead, Councilman Malcolm.
I'm listening to this and I'm thinking how interesting this is because it went in circle for me. I think we were talking about levees and flooding at some point, and Brian and I happened to be sitting next to each other for a meeting where we were talking about the levee and all the flooding. And I pointed out that the baseball park, Woodland Field, has this special fencing and they're able to keep water back. And I go, why do we know how much something like that costs or how we can get it installed? And Brian says, no, I have no idea. I go, well, maybe if you have some free time, and while you're eating lunch or something, find out for us. That might be interesting. I mentioned it to the city administrator. How about that? Nothing happened. Everybody goes, yeah, it'd probably be very expensive. I don't know. And then tonight, our city engineer comes in with the same thing I've asked questions about 3 months ago, but it was a casual conversation. It wasn't ever ordered, but now we have a proposal where people are doing a study to find out how do we put in the same thing I've asked about 3 months ago. That's what we're looking to do, be able to just ask questions, not because we're ordering stuff, but we're trying to see things we don't understand. Maybe you understand better. John understands stuff about water that I never, so I will ask him technical questions or just casually say, well, can we do it this way? It's not telling you what to do, but we're just looking to have an open conversation. And I think that's what's being taken away from this. It's not trying to grandstand, it's just trying to get it done the best way for the city and the people of this town. Thank you.
I think there might be a couple of other people that would like to make a couple comments before we go on to the vote. Go ahead.
Good evening, Mayor, Council. Stephanie Romanoli, Human Resources Manager for the City of Muscatine. I would like to assure, in particular, Councilmember Brackett, that staff did write that letter. It was a joint effort, primarily authored by one staff person, and was a group effort to review and ensure that the information we wanted council to understand was included in that memo.
Okay.
There are a number of people concerned about this ordinance change. Some of those staff members chose not to sign the letter. It doesn't mean that they are in agreement with the ordinance change. There are a number of possible issues and concerns that employees have in having council members approaching them on a regular basis whenever they feel they need to have a conversation with a staff member. I don't want to get into the details of those. I think they're outlined in the memo that was written to you. And I hope that you will take staff's information and opinion into serious consideration when you consider this ordinance change.
Thank you.
Can I
I think some of the, go ahead. Or were you done?
No, I just have
Oh, you have a
Question.
question to her.
Question,
Okay, go
yeah.
ahead.
Was your feedback in regards to the letter or to the proposal that I had requested or to the actual amended change?
Staff was aware of the amended change.
So what was your letter written because it said unfettered in regards to the very beginning?
That was your initial proposal, but
Okay,
we
so
were
it
aware
was-
that, staff was aware that alternate language was being suggested.
Okay, because the alternate language is not the same as far as just staff going up to city council at a regular basis.
The term unfettered may not, but not sure it wouldn't have the same outcome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I think part of the confusion too here is sometimes the presentation that's given. So I think when staff was informed about that council was talking about this, it came through the city administrator, and maybe his explanation of it was from his point of view, thinking it wasn't a good idea. Sometimes when you're presented information in such a way that it's more of a negative than the positive way that I feel I'm hearing council presented in a positive way. And it's not like council has wishes to run around questioning staff all the time and asking them all kinds of questions and taking up all their time, and now they're gonna be on a witch hunt and using all their time and asking them questions of stuff they don't need to know and on and on. That's not at all the intention that I hear from council. This council was elected by the people of Muscatine because they had the trust and faith in them to have their best interests at heart. So I would appreciate if council also was given that respect, that they're not just gonna go willy-nilly questioning people all the time. They may stop and have a conversation here and there. It's probably going to be very infrequent, but it's been made to be this big problem, and that's yet to be seen that it could even rise to that level. Councilman Harvey, did you have something you wanted to say before?
Yes, and I don't know if it,
Down, or directly to Stephanie?
no, just
Okay.
in general.
You can go ahead.
Can I respond to that?
Sure.
I don't think that staff necessarily thinks council's gonna be running around willy-nilly, approaching staff, but I would hope that council would understand that employees, especially in non-management positions in the city, don't have access to all of the information, that management staff has, that there's a process in place for a reason, that we have a city administrator for a reason, and that role has been in place for 50 years for a reason, and that employees appreciate knowing who they report to, who they're supposed to answer to, whose direction they're supposed to follow. And I think it was also outlined in the memo that staff wrote to you that this has never been about you not being able to stop by and say, hi, how are things going? What are you working on today? You're more than welcome to speak to employees when you see them. I see several of you out and around town. I know other staff members do as well, and we can chat, say hello. If you have a question about what's going on, that's not an issue.
But that's the problem, Stephanie. It has gotten to be an issue for some council. Some council are allowed to say, what are you working on today? Can you explain it? Other council haven't been afforded that same consideration, and so this is a way to make it be even for all of the council, and I'm sorry to interrupt you.
No, that's fine. I would respectfully disagree with that assessment. I think the difference has been whether council's asking operational related questions that should go through the city administrator.
Okay, thank you. You had somebody was,
Oh, I think I'm fine with.
okay,
I don't need to make my comment.
I had a comment.
go ahead.
I'll try to keep this short. Brian Steinman, Public Works Director. Nothing was conveyed to me through the city administrator. I come out to all the city council meetings and I attend and I can hear what's going on. And so I form my own opinions based on the language that I hear. And I do take things personally when I'm challenged on whether I've fudged numbers to make my project work or things like that. And I don't want to sit there and take it. And I worked really hard to not get up and defend my department and our decisions on the asphalt overlay project. That's resolved itself. I'm not going to worry about that any longer. But I have nothing to hide. I'm all for open government. But when I talk to my staff, and we've discussed this, and a lot of like my frontline staff, they're not interested in talking to council. Not that they don't like the council, they don't know what to say. It's intimidating to have an elected official come up to them, and so part of the reason that I think that as department heads we're concerned about this is we're not afraid of what they're going to say. If you have a question about a vehicle and they want to know how the vehicle works, the first thing I'm going to do is ask them, what do you think of the vehicle? You know, and if they don't like it, they'll tell me. I trust them that they'll tell me that. I don't understand why you wouldn't trust us to tell you what they say. That's the part, and that's the reason that I signed the letter and that I have these feelings, is that it just seems like there's a breakdown of the trust between staff and council. I don't know why that is. Hopefully it's nothing that I've done, but that's just a sense that I get. And so then I do get a little bit defensive about that, and maybe I've said some things in emails that I shouldn't have, and I apologize for those, but it gets to be a bit frustrating. So I just wanted to come up here and try to explain my position, at least, for my feelings and my signing of the letter in support of the other staff and department heads that I work with and the staff that works for me, that So I guess that's. all
Thank
I'll
you,
say for
Brian.
now.
I think the
I would-
trust thing, that the trust piece does come into play, and I think council would ask that the department heads also trust council to use good judgment in following through with this change, that they are going to make good judgment, and certainly not talk to somebody that is uncomfortable or anything like that. I would hope that staff would also trust council. Go ahead,
And-
Councilman
So I-
Saucedo.
Go ahead, Counselor.
Okay, so I wanted to respond to that. So part of, I don't even feel that if I run into you somewhere, Brian, that I can stop and have a conversation with you without the potential. No, not saying that's anything to do with you. I'm talking about the current code. The current code is interpreted, it can be interpreted multiple ways and has been shown to have been interpreted in multiple ways. We've had some council members that say, I never have a problem talking to anybody. I can talk to, no problem. Yeah, no,
Yeah, I know, it's
you know. However, other council members have tried to have conversations and have been told, oh, no, I can't talk to you. No, and some of the things that have come up in our meetings recently since, at different points in time have made me feel like, and ask Jim, he said hi to me one day and I said, I can't talk to you. I have concern, one of the city staff is in a outside group with me, and I have concerns about being extremely careful about what I say in that group while that person's present, because I want to make sure that nothing comes back that says, oh, well, Councilman Brackett violated code. So, well, now we're gonna need to move forward with the removal process because Councilman Brackett did this. So it's not you, it's not your staff, it's the way the code was written that is able to be changed depending on the situation. So what I feel that the code that was brought forward to us as an addition to that is it allows us to have conversations without fear of breaking code, and still allows staff the opportunity to say, oh no, I can't, we need to include the city administrator, we need to include my department head. And I'll be honest, unless somebody's in uniform, Brian, or they attend these meetings pretty regular, I don't know that they're, or I come out to your office, I don't know that they are necessarily a city employee. I mean, I'm pretty good with faces, but I don't remember everyone. Now, department heads, sure, because I see you guys all the time. You're here at the meetings. So this is why this code, to me, the change that the city attorney brought forward, I find acceptable. It allows us to have the conversation. It doesn't make it just open, and unfettered. It gives us the ability to not worry about, are we breaking code and risking our seat here while we're trying to represent the public. So I absolutely respect your stance on that. I think that, has already been said, some of the wording that has come forth as we've been trying to move this forward has not been very clear. And that's why I do support this change that has been brought forward, because I feel it provides staff the protection of council. I mean, who knows who will be on the council at some point in time. And that was one of my concerns. So I think that this is probably the best solution for both sides of the issue at this time. And I would hope that if we do proceed forward with this and move it forward, that some additional information is provided to all city staff at all levels that says something along the lines of, if you have an elected official talking to you in a way that you feel uncomfortable, you report it right away. This is not to make it so that we can harass people, because that's not what we want. At least it's not what I want. But I also, I want to make sure people don't get into a situation like that either. So I think that it's city staff, city administrator and HR need to make sure that people understand they have a right to say, no, that person keeps talking to me too much. They're asking me questions that make me uncomfortable, and that should be reported immediately. Nobody should put up with that. So that should be something that is part of the educational process of onboarding new members, and additional, anytime there's discussion about appropriate behavior and things like that, that should be brought forward so that people understand they don't have to be bothered by somebody if they feel uncomfortable. So that's that's where I'm at with it, and I'll stop now.
Well, I don't have anything really more to add. I just wanted to make my position known that, you know, I think the way it was fine. I don't pretend to interpret it for you. I don't have a law degree, but he does, and he can help us with that. I wanted the staff to know, I wanted the council to know that the staff was, I think, well, I can't speak for all the staff. I was fine the way it was before. I have one boss, and so it works for me. I have no problem with my boss, and everything flows fine as far as I'm concerned. I think that we get you the information that you request using that format. If council chooses to change that, we'll do whatever council says. That's how it works anyway. So I just wanted to say that. Maybe I said too much, but thank you for your time.
Councilman Harvey?
My comment parallels most of what Kelsey just said, that I wanted to be sure whether it's written or unwritten, but it's somehow understood that if a staff member chooses or feels uncomfortable with talking to a council member, they don't have to.
Right.
The only person I'd say maybe has to would be Greg. You know, but if anybody
council
else doesn't feel comfortable talking to a council member, fine, they don't have to. And like I said, I don't know if that needs to be in writing, because sometimes you can, if you want to interpret things strictly versus liberally, you know, you can get all sorts of interpretations. You know, this doesn't say they have to, but it doesn't say they don't have to either.
And certainly there shouldn't be any repercussions if they choose to.
Correct.
Or choose not to.
Or choose not to.
There is an issue that's come up that may not be addressed by that, and that's union, and especially around union time and union negotiations. That I see as a real possible concern with this proposed measure, and council interaction with staff. Maybe there needs to be a prohibition around that time frame. I don't know the answer to that question, but that could be a real problem if union members are trying to affect negotiations by having individual one-on-one conversations with council members when those discussions are supposed to happen in a certain manner. Second thing I wanted to say was our staff meetings are open, and when I say open, our staff meeting attendees are able to have an open and honest discussion with myself and their peers, and feel free and comfortable and safe to say what they want to say and have an opinion in that in those meeting rooms. You would obviously tonight you've got a number of folks. We went through Z, and you have a number of regular attendees from our staff here tonight. But you would also be surprised if they're not here. I know Jerry does, for example. Sorry to point you out, Jerry, but watches it at home on YouTube or on Channel 2. So your staff members are very well informed of council's opinion, not my interpretation of your opinion. They're here at meetings. They know what's going on in the community. They watch the council meetings, and if it's obviously if it's an interest to their department, especially, they're going to know what's going on.
Mr. Marquardt, you've been standing up there. Do you have something to add?
I do. Henry Marquardt, I'm a member of the general public.
Could you state your name and
Sure,
or,
Henry.
your name? You already said your address. I'm sorry.
108 Eagle Watch Road.
Thank you.
I'd like to speak on this because when this came up, I was rather surprised that you had this in the ordinance, because my experience, my background is as an attorney. I'm a professor at St. Ambrose. Is that the idea that you know, how can a government agency, I mean, looking at the city code, part of your responsibility as the elected officials is oversight. And how can you do oversight if you can't reach into the bureaucracy and find out what they're doing? And I'll speak from some experience. I had the honor of serving for 4 years as a member of the Iowa Environmental Protection Commission, including as its chairman. As chairman, I supervised the largest bureaucracy in the state of Iowa, because it supervised the DNR, environmental functions, the state revolving fund, and other agencies having to do with the environmental protection. And I can't even fathom what would have happened had some member of the legislature had to call me up and say, Henry, my district includes Washington, Iowa, and I want to go talk to the people at the DNR Washington office because I'm not sure what they're doing. I mean, the General Assembly members, and I would get phone calls all the time, as would the director of the DNR, from a senator or a representative. Who do I talk to at the DNR to find out what's going on? Because they have an oversight responsibility to find out what an agency they're doing that is spending the tax money that they're voting on is doing. In the 4 years that I did that, I'm not aware of a single problem that occurred with a state employee figuring that they were oppressed or made uncomfortable or something like that when in a legislative inquiry. I think there were cases where they were made uncomfortable, and a lot of those cases were situations where the employee had reasons to be uncomfortable if there was a request of information from the political responsible parties. So I would certainly urge you to adopt an ordinance like this. I would caution, and just hearing for the first time how this is being proposed, whether or not the section that says that you would have to bring this back to the city administrator is a good idea or not. Because what if you go and talk to somebody and the complaint is the city manager or city administrator is giving me bad directions? I mean, again, that is something as your oversight that you have the responsibility to do. So I would be a little, I think the overall ordinance is a good idea. I would think a little bit about the specific wording of that, because you don't want anything that interferes with your oversight responsibility. Thank you.
Thank you.
Your Honor,
Yes.
there are two ways to address that. One of them is with the city attorney as one mechanism. And the second is this body is supposed to have discussion at the council table and can only act at the council table. So it's a very simple solution. There's two of them, city attorney or at the council table. If it's a personnel issue, there are appropriate measures for that. The mechanisms are already in place to deal with all of those issues. Very simple.
Anything else? Certainly.
Well, while Max is going up, I would say we could, to your point, you could very easily clarify in that code just to city administrator or city attorney or the council as a whole in session, something along those lines.
And I think just to add to the administrator's comments in regards to negotiations during unions, I think that could be a sub-item or a line item added on to the amendment if you want to put potentially.
The code section that we would be amending is the code section that specifically identifies the city administrator's duties. So maybe what you guys are talking about might be better served if we were to put it in the council rules or things like that. But we can adopt it somewhere in writing, but I'm not sure it would fit where.
Right.
Okay.
In this spot.
That's fine.
Okay.
That's fine. I just want to be able to acknowledge the comments that the
Thank
city
you.
administrator had.
Please state your name and address.
Max Kaufman, 1609 Foster Street, Muscatine, Iowa. Your Honor, earlier on in your statements, you said something to the effect of the council members may approach the staff and with a question or something of some nature, and the staff may be hesitant to respond to them because they thought it was none of their business. Well, it is their business. It is all of the council's business. Everything is their business because they represent me, and it is my business because I'm paying the dollar at the end of the day. I'm the citizen of this city. So it is my business, it is your business, and this this addendum needs to go through. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you. Anyone else? So do we have consensus to move forward and put this on the next agenda?
We had that 20 minutes ago.
Well, we had a first and a second theoretically, we had, that we could get that from the comments. However, Councilman Malcolm,
Yeah, I consent, Your Honor.
Councilman Brackett, Councilman Fitzgerald, Councilman Saucedo.
Yes.
Councilwoman Brockert,
Yes.
Councilman Harvey. Sounds like we have consensus to move forward and have a first reading at our next council meeting of the,
I'd say, as long as some of these concerns can somehow be addressed about, I hadn't thought about what Greg mentioned, that maybe a city employee wants to lobby a council member for something. Well, that's just as probably maybe as inappropriate as the council member wanting to go to the city employee and make some requests. So I hadn't thought about it being a two-way street, but it certainly is.
So,
Some of these concerns, I don't know if you could write a law that couldn't be abused by somebody.
right,
Right.
That's why we keep rewriting laws.
yep,
Yeah.
that's it.
Your Honor,
Yes.
I think what it all boils down to is we need to be sensitive to the feelings of city staff and city employees and not try to force ourselves on them, but just, work on having relationships so that they feel comfortable. And if they feel intimidated, that's fine too.
yeah, and I would encourage staff to add something either to the handbook or as a handout or something along those lines. I would like to see it as well before it goes out. I don't know about the rest of the council, but I would like to see something to make sure that I do, understand that those concerns are being addressed from that side of things. As far as lobbying us goes, I don't, if they're a resident of Muscatine, they do have a right to ask for things, but I'm also, if one city staff person's coming to me saying, hey, I really need you to do this, I really need you to do this thing, that's not gonna have any more impact than, I'm okay with that because it's, one person isn't gonna make a difference for me. It's not in making decisions for the whole city.
And the one thing I would caution you on that is there is a provision under Iowa Code Chapter 20 for prohibited practices under labor negotiation, and you individually talking with an employee is a prohibited practice.
Right.
So it's better to just say, you need to have your union rep talk to
Right.
our city
Yep.
people, because if they don't get what they want and it's a one-on-one conversation that's not recorded, we've seen this in Council Bluffs and Joaquin, other cities where they say, well, the council member talked to me and tried to sway me. So
Right.
just to prevent any of you from having an unfair labor charge, we will make a note to say, if you guys get that, say, I appreciate your concern, I'm gonna pass it on and I can't talk to you.
And that's already state law.
Yes.
Right? So that could just be something that at the time of, when we get to the point where we're going to be entering those negotiations, a reminder can be sent to council from staff and can be, could be sent to the union members as well. Hey, listen, from this time to this time, it's inappropriate for you to have conversations of this nature. Make sure you don't, or else you're violating the law. And that already exists as state law, so there's no reason to put that into our code.
Correct.
But to just have it as a reminder, don't do this because you'll be breaking the law. Perfect.
And really, it's an ongoing issue. Just don't do it,
And I
period.
really
Not
look
that
at
you're-
this too as a way to protect everyone. Because a lot of, I'm hearing this has been the code for 50 years, and I'm hearing Phil say stuff like, well, I've always went and asked questions and stuff. Theoretically, Phil could have gotten in trouble for that. The staff person who
Questions go
talked to
through
him
Greg.
could have gotten in trouble for that. The times that you didn't, you said there was a couple times when you just went and talked to him and asked a question. Alan has said he's asked a couple questions. He could have gotten in trouble for it, the staff person. So even though it's been loosey-goosey at times, and council has had an opportunity to talk to staff, theoretically, it could have been a problem. This cleans that up and protects everyone from that ever being, like Kelsey was mentioning, he could lose his seat on council for doing that. So this will protect everyone. So it sounds like we have consensus for that. We're going to move on the rest of the agenda, since I'm not hearing anything else, for communications. Councilman Harvey, do you have anything to share tonight?
Nothing tonight, Your Honor.
Councilman Malcolm?
Nothing tonight, Your Honor.
Councilman Fitzgerald?
Nothing at this time, Your Honor.
Councilwoman Brockert?
I'm sure there's people questioning when North Hauser will be open. Jim, would you like to share? Please.
I heard by the time school starts, which is 8 days away.
Mayor, council, we have talked with the contractor. I mean, he's sitting back there, but I am not calling him up here. This is my question to answer. We have talked with the contractor. He has expressed his desire to meet our desire to have it open by school. Now, I am not going to stand here and give you a written guarantee, because there are always things that happen that we can't control, but we are doing everything we can to get it open by the opening of school. I had a conversation with Miller at the school district on that exact same subject today. I told him the exact same thing. We are going to do everything we can to get that thing open.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Just a second.
Don't go anywhere.
Has there been any change in the topography of Miller's Hill? Has it slid anymore?
You mind, Brian? I'll answer. It's moved a little bit.
It has, okay.
And it appears to still be moving, but just in conversations today when we went and looked at it, we're gonna set some survey pins on it and start figuring out exactly how much it's moving. Things like that never fail spectacularly or catastrophically. They fail slowly. So it could move. I mean, I'm not exaggerating, but that thing could move for another year and then come down. So what we're trying to get some sort of handle on how far and how fast it's moving, or how slow it's moving.
Okay, all right.
I think
Thank you.
it's not moving back uphill.
No.
Oh, no.
If it was, you'd have known that at the start of the meeting. Anything else?
Thank you, Jim.
Thank you.
Thank you. Oh, and Riverbend Neighbors will meet Monday night, 7 p.m. at Fire Station Number 2. Everyone is welcome.
Councilman Salcedo?
Just a comment in regards to my condolences to the Estabrook family in regards to the bicycle accident that was or actually earlier in this week, and to the family of those outside in the county as well, too, that just had the fire, too. That's all I have.
Thank you. Councilman Brackett?
I just want to, I want to actually make a statement to all city staff right now that if any communications come from me that sound, if I misphrase something and it sounds like I'm saying, go do this, that's not, I'm telling you right now that if I slip up in my wording and that's how it sounds, that's not what it is. I am never at any point in time giving a directive to any city staff to do something outside of this venue where council makes a decision as a whole. So I want to make sure that they all understand. I am not doing that. If I say something that comes across that way, I apologize it came across that way, but that's not my intention. Right here, right now, very clearly stating, no matter what I tell you, I'm not giving you a directive. So, thank you. That's all I got tonight.
All right, thank you. Staff?
Nothing tonight, Your Honor.
I just have a few things. First of all, reminder, we have no council meeting next week, or the next week for that matter. But next week, you're encouraged to attend the Almost Friday Fest on the riverfront instead of coming to council meeting. Our city guests, recently we had Chris Jasper with Muscom on, and Ed Chamberlain is doing Relay for Life, August 24th on the riverfront from 4 to 11. If any of you have an opportunity to join that festivity to raise money for Relay for Life. Also coming up, we have Jenna Wagner from Kiwanis Club and Sue Johansson from the League of Women Voters. Next, I'd like to invite everybody, and I talked about this briefly at our last meeting, but Relay of Voices is a project that Greg Jenkins with the Chamber and I've been working on for about a year and a half. There's a couple of people who are running down the river from the Mississippi at the top down to the bottom, and they're stopping at a few periodic chosen towns. Muscatine is one of them chosen. They're going to be here for an afternoon, and they want to meet a few people from our community and hear more about our life here in Muscatine. At the end, they will be putting all of the stories that they've learned into a project, and we'll be able to have access to that when it's all said and done. So Sunday at 1 p.m. at the Riverview Center, they will be there to meet with anybody that lives in Muscatine that would like to join us. We hope you are able to come. But I did want to preface that with letting everyone know that if you do come, the elevator doesn't work. So as a result of the flooding, there's been some problems with the elevator. So if you come, please know that you will have to walk upstairs to get to the top of the Riverview Center where we'll be meeting. Lastly, our next coffee with the mayor is Tuesday morning, August 20th at 9 a.m. We're going to meet at Sunnybrook, so that folks who live there have an opportunity to join in and have coffee and conversation with us as well, but it's still certainly open to the public. So the next time we have a council meeting will be after Labor Day, September 5th. So everyone have a nice holiday weekend, and do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
We're adjourned. Oh, Nadine.
Alan won.
You